Saludos. I am Jorge Merced, Associate Artistic Director at Pregones Puerto Rican Traveling Theater. And on behalf of our entire family of artists, welcome to Spotlight. Entire family of artists, welcome to Spotlight, our weekly series showcasing creatives at work. This episode is dedicated to folk arts practitioner Julia Gutiérrez. The youngest daughter of acclaimed plenero Juan Gutiérrez, Julia is a master of the Puerto Rican bomba folk dance genre, one of today's most respected bomba dancers. Her unique style combines both traditional influences and an urban swag, telling a multi-layered story of diasporican identity and experience. On a personal note, I had the pleasure of directing Julia in the creation and premiere of her show, I Am Julia, at Pregones in 2019. And for those of you who have visited our Bronx venue, you'll be pleased to know that Julia is the inspiration and model for the impressive 18-foot-tall glass mosaic mural created by Manny Vega that is on display at our lobby. Thank you for joining us. And if you're watching this online, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and our social media platforms. Gracias por estar con nosotros y que disfruten.
My name is Julia Loisa Gutiérrez Rivera, born and raised Harlem, New York City, but I am Boricua, Puerto Riqueña, New Yorican. I am a first-generation New Yorican, second-generation bombera and plenera. That means I am a practitioner, a person that walks the path of learning, performing, teaching, celebrating the acts of Bomba and Plena. They are ancestral and heritage-based expressions from Puerto Rico that directly connects us to our African ancestry. I was raised in this. This was always my daily experiences, being around the elders as a child, seeing them rehearse and perform, learning from a very, very young age, being on stage from a very, very young age. It's just part of like our breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I don't consider myself to be an artist. I do consider myself to be a practitioner, somebody that is charged with the responsibility of making sure I represent as best as possible the legacy that our ancestors and our elders and my father has bestowed upon me. When I came back from Puerto Rico after finishing my undergraduate, Bomba in New York City was experiencing a very specific moment in time where folks my age, my contemporaries in their early 20s, this is about 2004, were really going to bars and celebrating Bomba and Plena in a completely different frame of mind. It wasn't so much we do this because this is an ancient cultural practice. It's because it's part of our lives and what we love to do. And we talk Bomba and Plena, we talk about being a New Yorican and how that informs our practice. I think that really was a pivotal moment in time for me and how I chose to continue walking this path. What I like best about what I do is there's never a repetitive moment. You know, these are expressions that are inherently improvised. They're spontaneous. This element of dancing and navigating between the unknown that's exciting with a really strong sense of fundamento and ancestral knowledge is kind of riveting, right? Because you never know what to expect. And you know that whatever happens that day or in that song or on that stage, that you have that map to ground you, right? It's really exciting. create, I like to first and foremost take deep breaths. And I think that that's mostly related to the fact that, again, I don't necessarily consider myself to be an artist. I just do what comes naturally to me, what is kind of pulling me from the gut, right? This thing that is informed by an energy that is in a space. If I can, I try to walk the space, get familiar with just the landscape, with the acoustics, where the other band members are going to be. What are the time constraints that I have? Does the floor feel better with shoes, without shoes? Does this feel better with a skirt or without a skirt? And that's as much as I try to prescribe to the process. Once the music starts, or once I know that this is the song that I'm supposed to dance, deep breaths, and let that natural energy, that adrenaline that starts bubbling inside take over. Inspiration in the everyday process. As a bombera and as a plenera, we understand that what we do is representing expressions that are 450, 200, 100 years old. And within that, it's really interesting to think about those lessons, right, that come with all those years of practice, of discovery. But also understanding that we live in the here and now, and that those lessons, how we receive them and perceive them and enact upon them, are going to change. Because I'm in New York City, because I'm in New York City, because I speak with an accent, and sometimes I like to dance with sneakers. Try to look at not only my elders, and my father is my first role model because that's who raised me in these traditions. So being able to see his process, his frustrations, his joys, those little moments of discoveries is something that I know teaches me a lot about just the practice and about myself, right? Because there's a direct bloodline there. But also looking at my contemporaries, right? I think that there's a really interesting movement now with folks that are not only first or second generation diasporicans, but bomberos and pleneros that are defining themselves as contemporary or urban artists in Puerto Rico and what they're choosing to do, and being more and more open with infusing other practices, with infusing other themes in the songs that we choose to write or sing, in infusing other elements of dance in the piquetes or the repiques of the drum. You I think that there's a really exciting shift that's been happening in the past probably 10, 15 years, and it's been charged by the younger practitioners, which is really interesting to see when you understand that probably 30 years ago, the majority of the practitioners were elders.
This is a message from Carlos. He says, I support Pregones PRTT because Boricua artistic expression was born of the racial, cultural, and linguistic roots which formed us. Hacer arte es hacer patria. Help the young to know themselves. I mean, this is exactly one of the reasons why I love PRTT and Pregones, is because this was the first place I worked when I moved to New York City as a young artist. It's one of the only places in New York where I can explore my artistic side and my culture, and it's a place where both of those things can come together.
I really do feel that the level of integrity in the work, also in the sense of community with front of house and just everybody involved in the Pregones family, makes people feel happy and makes people leave the theater feeling lifted.
It speaks to our current moment here in the world where people need to escape, and I love that this theater provides inspiration and a reminder of our beautiful culture. I feel that it is a place, a sanctuary for artists, Puerto Rican artists, to develop their craft, develop themselves as people, and it provides that for not only Puerto Ricans here in New York City and abroad, but also it provides that for other Latino artists and also artists from the LGBTQ+ community.
We are so proud to be recognized as one of the leading Latinx theater ensembles in the nation. And we're home to more than 20 artists ranging from choreographers, actors, designers, playwrights, who continue to share their stories and their talent on our stages, both in the Bronx and in Manhattan. The support of our donors not only helps to keep the legacy that Miriam Colon set forth here at Pregones Puerto Rican Traveling Theater, but also impacts artists, for instance, in Puerto Rico, where we have been able to institute grants, emergency grants, to artists that were affected by Hurricane Maria, and now most recently by artists who were also affected by the earthquakes in Puerto Rico. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being part of our family.
For me, Pregones is a family. It's so much more than an organization or a space that creates art or creates space. It's the individuals behind the stage. My relationship or history with Pregones and Jorge, Rosalba, Alban, Arnaldo, everybody, I mean, it goes back to probably when I was crawling. I remember Pregones back when everybody was in St. Anne's and going to the productions there and just feeling like really small because I was tiny, I was very young, and just seeing these stage lights and people doing amazing things that it was just so impactful, right? It is very much a family. I think Pregones has been right there by my side in every milestone and learning chapter of my own history as a New Yorican, as a Puerto Riqueña, as a creative practitioner, as an arts administrator. They've always been there. Last June 1st, 2019, was the premiere of my solo piece called I Am Julia. And it's amazing that it's already been a year. But that piece was the culminating experience of months of work, of hours of work by myself in this space. And it was such a beautiful challenge to take on because I've never really been at a place where I was asked to create, to reflect, to explore by myself, right? Thinking about like the prescription and how do you choreograph and all that stuff. It was completely opposite to how I would naturally do what I do. But in those spaces of solitude and quiet, you have to dig very, very deep, right? And you realize things about yourself that you probably weren't cognizant of or conscious of, and other influences that run through your veins that you weren't realizing were there. Just by jumping on a box or going from one side to the next, screaming or singing at the top of your lungs, because this space was safe enough to do that. Watch videos of it and it doesn't seem to do justice. That moment of being on the stage, the theater packed with people that I loved and that were part of my community. I mean, the energy was so vibrant. I could hear people's breath, and at some points it matched my own while I was on stage. And just the amazing sense of intimacy that created and offered to me as an individual in a time and in a place where I was also being very vulnerable, I think is a really prized moment that I'm humbled to have had, because not a lot of us have those experiences. Over the past few months, I've learned two things. The importance of being accountable and responsible to yourself in your practice is critical. And I say that because as a practitioner within an expression that is so ingrained by the presence of an other, when you don't have that opportunity to be in the same space with others, what are you left with? That doesn't mean that the exploration, the learning, the practice stops. And that doesn't mean that the only way that you explore and you practice and you develop yourself is by doing the dance form or by drumming. There's other things that you can do. I also work a lot in arts administration, and that's been informing and infusing a lot of the work that I do. And I think there's been a resounding preoccupation about how our artists and practitioners are going to come out of this when we're not necessarily on the streams, when a lot of us perhaps subsistence, by cash-based economies, going to bars and playing there, what's going to happen? So there's this idea of when you're in this practice, yes, self-accountability and responsibility is important, but also understand that what you do and when you do it as an individual is going to impact the community. So the work that I can do, if I have access to other means, to try to share that with my friends, with my colleagues, con mis camaradas, con mis bomberos, mi plenero, lo poquito que yo tengo, to share that. I think that's really important. So I think about a conversation that I had a few weeks ago about looking towards the future and thinking about diversity, inclusion, representation, voice, agency. And I can't help but think about how our expressions are built metaphorically as a practice. And they're built on this idea of a circle. Not a pyramid, not a square, not a line, not a triangle. It's built on a circle. And in a circle, everybody's voice and presence is needed. The moment one element of that circle is broken, the energy, that safety of what you're creating is no longer. And when you're thinking about bosses to employees, teachers to students, elders to youth, if you put them on a circle, everybody has something to say. And there's not one that's more correct than the other. It's like, let's have a conversation and see what we can learn from each other and what we can create or what we can do being in that circle. Oftentimes we get so caught up in the doing of things that we forget to check into what informs what it is that we're doing, right? And that's very much our mental state. What are our values? Our spirituality. And I think that that's really important to connect to who you are, because that's what you put on the stage. You do it in a musical vocabulary, you do it in movement vocabulary, but what you're showing is who you are and where you come from. So why lose sight of that? I'm excited to just stop. And when this quarantine first was imposed, that moment of pause was really palpable. Because everybody was a little bit shook. And then a couple of weeks after that, it was like, all right, we got to reconfigure this reality. But I'm excited to just stop and take more time to myself and connect with my fellow practitioners. Oftentimes, we're so hard on ourselves. Like, oh, that was not great, or I made a mistake. It's, in the depths and those mistakes is when you thrive because you learn from yourself. Be willing to experiment and try new things. There's nothing wrong with that. Especially if you're thinking about cultural practice, right? There's so much that is imposed upon us, rightfully so, about sticking true to the traditions and understanding the techniques and the stories and everything that came before us. That is critical to understand, yes. And be willing to explore with that. What does that mean for you? Not what it means for your father, for your grandfather, for your mother, your tatarabuela, somebody that you've never met. They're still there. Yeah, but what does that mean to you? How are you going to make your own sentence with those words that you've learned along the way? That comes with time. So be patient with the process. Be grateful for failure. Because at one point, 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line, you're going to look back and say, wow, this is what I've learned.
Mi Sevillana, ¿dónde está?